My name is Evelyn Hart, and for most of my life, I believed that love could fix anything. For 32 years, my husband, Michael, and I built a quiet life in our old two-story house on the hill. The house had character, a creaking staircase, sun-warmed wooden floors, and a kitchen window painted blue, because Michael always said, "Blue makes a home feel like sky." When he passed away, the silence left behind was enormous, the kind that follows you from room to room. The only thing that eased it was my son, Daniel. He was all I had left, or that's what I believed. Daniel hadn't lived with me in years. He had moved to the city, gotten a degree in business, and partnered with his charismatic friend, Lucas Ward. Whenever they visited, they spoke fast, laughed loud, and always left early, like life was waiting for them just outside my front door. But after Michael's death, Daniel began visiting more often. He would sit at the kitchen table, tapping his fingers restlessly. "Mom, you shouldn't live in this house alone. You need something easier, something modern." He always said modern like it was salvation. I thought he was just worried. I thought he was being a good son. I thought love was still simple. One evening, Daniel arrived with Lucas. Lucas smiled like he had practiced it in a mirror. Too perfect. Too polished. "Evelyn," he said warmly, "Daniel and I have been working on something big. A real estate venture. We want you to be part of it." "Part of it?" I repeated. Daniel leaned forward, excitement sparking in his eyes. "Mom, the house. If we transfer the deed into the company's name, we can use it as collateral. It would help us secure a major investment." I blinked. "The house? This house?" Suddenly, I felt Michael's absence again, sharp and cold this time. Lucas continued, smooth and unbothered. "You'll still live here. Nothing changes. It's just paperwork. Just paperwork." I smiled politely, the kind of smile you use when you don't want to break something fragile. "Let me think about it," I said. Daniel looked disappointed. Lucas looked calculating, and something small and painful, shifted in the room. That night, I sat in my living room holding my tea but not drinking it. Outside, the streetlights flickered softly, and I could almost hear Michael's voice. "Pay attention to what isn't being said." I suddenly realized Daniel had never asked how I was doing. Not once. Not since the funeral. Not since the grief. Not since the silence. And that was the first moment, the smallest moment, when I felt something inside me crack. A week passed before Daniel returned. He didn't call first. He just walked in, using the spare key he had never returned after college. I was in the kitchen, watering the fern by the window. The morning light was warm, soft, almost gentle. But Daniel's presence shifted the air the moment he entered. He smelled of cologne and city air, rushed, polished, distant. "Mom, we need to talk," he said. Not, "How are you?" Not, "Did you eat?" Just business. He sat at the table and placed a thick envelope in front of him. "These are the documents for the house." There it was. So soon, so direct. I stayed standing, hands resting on the chair back, grounding myself. "Daniel," I whispered. "This house is all I have of your father." His jaw tightened. "Mom, Dad is gone." Those words stole the air from the room. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, really looked. His eyes weren't cruel. They were tired, heavy, like someone carrying a weight he didn't know how to set down. Maybe he didn't mean to hurt me, but he was going to. 2 days later, Lucas showed up again, this time wearing a suit so sharp it felt like a warning. He brought pastries, smiled warmly, complimented the curtains, the practiced grace of someone who sells trust for a living. "Evelyn, we just want to help you. You've been through so much." His voice was soft, sympathetic, and empty. He slid the documents across the table, page after page of legal terms, financial language, promises wrapped in ink. "If you sign, we can secure investors immediately," he said. "You'll be a shareholder, a partner, an equal." An equal, Funny how betrayal comes disguised as generosity. I didn't sign. I simply said, I need more time. Lucas kept smiling, but Daniel didn't. That evening, Daniel stayed for dinner. I made his favorite, rosemary chicken and mashed potatoes, the meal I always cooked when he came home from school as a boy. But he barely touched his plate. Mom, why are you dragging this out? It's a business decision. It's logical. I set down my fork. Daniel, is this about money? He didn't answer right away. His thumb tapped the table. Once, twice, faster. The company is going through a tight phase, he finally said. We just need leverage, temporary. Once things stabilize, we'll transfer the deed back. I promise, promises. So easy to speak, so hard to keep. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. He didn't pull away. But he didn't hold my hand either. Daniel, I said softly, I will not let you gamble the home your father built with his hands. His eyes lifted. There was something in them I had never seen before. Not anger, but shame. And behind the shame, fear. When Daniel left that night, he didn't hug me goodbye. The house felt heavier than ever, the walls holding a silence that didn't feel like grief anymore. It felt like warning. I made tea, but didn't drink it. I walked to Michael's old armchair and sat down, the fabric still faintly smelling of cedar and soap. I stared at the documents on the table. The house number. The legal language. My own name typed neatly under the line where I would sign. It struck me. Suddenly, Daniel wasn't trying to hurt me. He was drowning, and he was trying to use the only lifeline he had left. Me. And the heartbreak wasn't that he needed help. The heartbreak was that he didn't ask. He took. At dawn, I went outside to breathe. Mrs. Keller, my neighbor of 15 years, was tending her roses. She looked up, studied my face, and without asking a single question, she said, "Come inside." "You need tea." I followed her, and I broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a window cracking from the cold. I told her everything. Every word tasted like grief. When I finished, she placed her hand over mine. Warm, steady, real. Love doesn't disappear when someone changes, she said. But sometimes love must learn to step back before it is lost completely. I closed my eyes, because I knew something had to change, and that something was me. The next week passed in small, brittle silences. Daniel didn't call. Lucas didn't visit, but the envelope of documents stayed on my kitchen table, a constant reminder that something inside my life had shifted, and I hadn't moved with it. I dusted the shelves. I baked. I watered the fern. I did everything but look at the papers, because looking meant accepting something I wasn't ready to feel. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the phone rang. Not my cell, the old landline. The one only telemarketers and people who remembered Michael used. Mrs. Hart? "This is attorney Grace McIntyre." My stomach tightened. "Your son asked me to request updated homeowner verification documents last week. I'm calling to confirm—" I froze. "Homeowner verification?" I repeated. "Yes, for transfer of deed ownership." I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers ached. "I haven't signed anything." There was a short silence on the other end. Mrs. Hart. "It appears a signature was submitted." The room tilted. The air felt thin. My voice came out in a whisper so quiet I barely heard myself. "Show me." The attorney emailed the documents. I printed them from the old office printer, each sheet, sliding out like a betrayal unfolding, and there it was, my name, written neatly, smooth, confident. But not mine. My signature had always wavered. The Y looping too high when I was tired. This signature was perfect, too perfect. Someone had traced me. Someone had practiced me. Someone I raised. My hands began to shake. I pressed them flat on the table, like I could stop the shaking, if I just stayed still enough. But the shaking wasn't in my hands. It was in my chest. I drove to the city. I don't remember the traffic or the lights, or the rain starting halfway there. I just remember standing in the lobby of Daniel's office building, hands cold. Documents folded under my arm. Lucas saw me first. He smiled. Like we were old friends meeting by accident. "Evelyn, we were just talking about you." I didn't smile back. I didn't sit when they offered seats. I placed the papers on the conference table, softly, carefully, like setting down something dead. "I did not sign this." Daniel's face went still. Lucas spoke first. "Evelyn." It must be a misunderstanding, but Daniel couldn't look at me. My son looked at the floor like a child caught stealing. My voice trembled when I asked, "Did you forge my signature?" He didn't answer. Lucas stepped forward instead, voice smooth as oil. "Mrs. Hart, try to understand." I raised my hand, and for the first time in my life, they stopped talking. The silence was a wound.
"You used my grief," I said quietly. "You waited until I was alone, until I was tired, until I was small inside my own home." Daniel finally looked at me. His eyes were red around the edges. Not from guilt, from fear. "Mom." I didn't know what else to do. The company is failing. Everything is falling apart. If we lose this deal, I stepped back. Not because he repulsed me, but because I suddenly saw him, not as my son, but as a man, who would rather sacrifice me than fail. Didn't shout, I didn't slam the door, I didn't cry, I simply said, "You could have asked me. I would have helped you. Not the house, but you. Always you." His face crumpled, his voice cracked. "I was afraid you'd say no." I blinked slowly, like my heart had just exhaled its last warm breath. "So you took." Instead, he didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. I walked out of that office without looking back, not because I didn't love him, but because love, when stepped on, must retreat to survive. The city lights blurred behind the rain-streaked windshield as I drove home. Michael's voice came back to me, clear as if he were sitting beside me. Strength doesn't always look like holding on. Sometimes it looks like leaving. And for the first time since he died, I believed him. The house was silent when I returned, but it wasn't the empty silence of grief anymore. It was a listening silence. A silence waiting for me to decide who I would become now. I hung my coat, boiled water for tea, and sat at the table. The same table where Daniel had once done his homework. The same table where Michael and I had shared every morning coffee. The same table where betrayal had been slid across to me in an envelope. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurting. I was. But the pain had settled into something still and sharp, something like clarity. There was a knock at the door just before sunset. Mrs. Keller stood outside, holding a basket of warm bread and lavender honey. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She sat across from me and waited, letting the silence speak first. Finally, I said, "He forged my name." Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She just reached across the table and took my hand, the way Michael used to when my world shook. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. I looked toward the blue-windowed kitchen, where morning light used to fall like grace. "I'm going to keep the house," I said. "Not because it's a house, but because it is the one thing in my life I didn't lose." Mrs. Keller nodded, not with approval, but with recognition. "Then you will need help." The next day, she drove me to her niece's office, Rebecca Shaw, a real estate and elder protection attorney known for handling quiet battles no courtroom ever hears about. Rebecca listened to everything. She didn't interrupt. She didn't soften the truth. When I finished, she said, "Evelyn, this is fraud. And it's not just business trouble. It's criminal. But we can fix it." Her voice was calm, steady, a voice that knew how to hold someone just before they break. "Do you want to pursue legal action?" she asked. I closed my eyes. I saw Daniel as a boy, running barefoot in the backyard, climbing the apple tree, laughing at dandelions. I saw him at 6. At 12, at 18, at 34, my heart whispered, "I love him. But I cannot let him destroy me." I opened my eyes. No lawsuits, not yet. "I just want my house back. Quietly. Cleanly. Rebecca nodded. Then we do this the right way, with truth. And with patience. For 2 weeks, I gathered documents, receipts, mortgage statements, bank records, letters from Michael, family photographs, proof of history, proof of belonging, proof of love lived in walls and wood and time. In the evenings, I walked through the house slowly, touching door frames, picture frames, the old banister rail, polished by decades of hands. Every part of this home held memory. Daniel saw property, saw life. Rebecca arranged a meeting with Daniel and Lucas, not in their office this time. Here, in my home. Baked rosemary bread. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to feel steady, calm, rooted in myself. When they arrived, Daniel looked exhausted, eyes shadowed, suit wrinkled, something broken behind his expression. Lucas tried to smile. The charm was thinner this time. We sat at the table, the same table, the one that had held grief and tea and betrayal. Rebecca spoke for me, not because I couldn't speak, but because I no longer needed to defend myself. The deeds were transferred using a forged signature. All associated documents are void. Mrs. Hart retains full legal ownership of this home. Lucas inhaled sharply. Daniel closed his eyes. I kept mine open. You have until Friday to remove all claims. Rebecca continued. If you do, no legal action will follow. If you don't, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Lucas spoke first, anger cutting through his voice. Do you realize what you're doing? You're sinking the company. I lifted my hand, just once, and silence swallowed the room. This house is not your investment, I said quietly. It is my life, and I will not trade my life for your mistakes. Daniel looked up then, finally meeting my eyes. His voice was small. Mom? I didn't want to hurt you. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed steady. You didn't hurt me when you asked, Daniel. You hurt me when you didn't. His face crumpled. No one spoke after that. They left quietly. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder before she went. Mrs. Keller was waiting across the street, watching from her porch, and for the first time since Michael died. I didn't feel alone. The house was warm that evening. Sunlight spilled through the blue window, the same one Michael had painted, the same one that had watched my grief and my healing. I stood in the kitchen, hands resting lightly on the counter, not shaking anymore, not lost anymore. Just here, present, whole. My phone buzzed once on the table, a message from Daniel. Mom, I signed the withdrawal forms. The house is yours again. I'm sorry. I don't know who I am anymore. I read it twice, then once more. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. The kind of sorry that comes after the damage is done, the kind that is real. But too late to undo anything. I typed nothing back, not out of cruelty, but because sometimes silence says, I still love you. But I cannot go back there anymore. That evening, I sat with Mrs. Keller on her porch. The sky was turning lavender, soft clouds drifting like thoughts half remembered. She poured me tea. It hurts, I admitted, staring at the street. Loving someone who does not know how to love you back. She nodded. It's one of life's oldest sorrows. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. Some pain sits quietly, like a bird on your shoulder. Light, but always there. Spring came. I planted rosemary where Michael used to mow the lawn. Daniel didn't come around anymore. There was no big fight. No dramatic ending. Just distance, the soft kind that grows like moss. Lucas moved out of state. The company dissolved quietly. No headlines. No revenge, just consequences. Some endings are not loud. Some endings are simply true. Months later, on an early autumn morning, Daniel knocked on my door. He looked different, older, tired, human again. He stood there with no papers. No briefcase. No rehearsed smile. Just my son. We sat at the kitchen table. This time, there were no documents between us. Only tea. He didn't ask to stay. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said, I'm trying to be better. And I nodded. Not because I had forgotten, but because I still loved him. And love doesn't always heal. Sometimes it just stops bleeding. That evening, I stood by the blue window. The sun was going down, casting gold across the house that had held every version of me, the girl in love, the wife in grief, the mother in heartbreak, the woman reborn. I whispered softly, Michael. I kept our home. The wind moved through the trees like someone breathing out. Relieved, I closed my eyes and I felt it. Not happiness, not sadness, but peace. A soft, steady peace that came from surviving something that wanted to break me. I stayed whole, I stayed gentle, and that was the victory.